The haves and the have-nots, tribal leadership, exaggeration, great truths, and great lies. These are all pressures that this cycle of the human design weather for June 7th to 13th, 2025 will bring. Hello, hello, everyone. I'm Margot Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. I've been on a bit of a journey. I'm camping on my way back from Vancouver to Calgary. And yeah, I just finished a retreat for my force therapy certification. So that's done. Yay. All right. Well, here I'm a certified human design professional and intuitive coach. I'm on a mission to help you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Thought I'd give you the background. I'm in the Okanagan right now near Kelowna, for those of you familiar with Canada. All right. Well, in this podcast, Human Design, Whether or Not, we explore the conditioning influences of the planetary motions, the transit field. You can't avoid the conditioning pressures. You'll likely feel their effects or notice their effects playing out around you, but rather than you reacting and being pulled off track, this awareness will empower you to navigate the cycles, staying true to your authentic nature and perhaps taking advantage of opportunities when correct for you. Okay, let's delve into the weather for this cycle. This cycle begins on June 7th at 6:07 a.m., going until June 13th at 3:20 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, Universal Time Coordinates, it's coming in June 7th at 12:07 p.m., going until June 13th at 9:20 a.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the sun earth activations because that's 70% of the conditioning field. Well, this cycle, we're moving out of the collective and into tribal traits. While the collective brought a pressure to better things for humanity, or not, the polarity can always be there, the tribe looks after its own. You can think of tribe as family, community, business. There's always a theme of mutual support built into the tribal traits. I do this for you, you do that for me. The sun has moved into gate 45, the trait of the gatherer, also called gathering together, in the throat center, which is our center that's associated with communication, expression, and manifestation. It has a keynote that says the natural and generally beneficial attraction of like forces. It's the only expression for the tribal circuitry in the throat. It's the only throat trait, whereas every other part of the circuitry has multiple throat gates. So this is the tribal leadership trait. It's the voice of I have, I don't have, we don't have. When I have this, I'm going to, da da da. If I had that, then I could, da da da, or we could. The manifestation of the material happens here, and it's actually the only place in the throat where that happens. There is a possessiveness that's brought into or comes through this trait in terms of gathering support for resources. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We think of possessiveness in kind of a yucky way, but as long as it benefits the whole community, this is what it's really about. This is what being beneficial means in that keynote. But if one is selfishly possessive at the expense of those in the community or those in the business or whatever it might be, it's not going to play out well here. In this case, the money or the resources that are personally gained by that leader can really poison that leader. This trait points at the ego center, the heart center, which is a motor that generates willpower, which means this gate is a gate of action. It's all about gathering together, gathering that support, whether that's for some cause or it could even be gathering together for a war. With this trait present and the pressure to possess resources, it can actually feel good to go shopping if you're feeling down. However, if you don't have the resources, best to go window shopping and dream. That's a healthy way to use this energy. If you run a business, this could be a time when you may really be able to gather support for whatever it is that you'd like to manifest. Good time to look at your resources generally as well. What do you have? What don't you have? Who could support you in having? The earth has moved into gate 26, the trait of the egoist in that ego center, that heart center, the willpower center. It has a keynote that says the maximization of power, of memory, applied to the nurturing of continuity. This is all about supporting the continuous improvement for the tribe, selling the tribe on an upgrade as part of that continuous improvement process. The tribe is inherently conservative. So exaggeration is needed. There's a healthy form of exaggeration to get people to let go of their memory of the old and embrace the new. The trait here can also bring through great truths and great lies. There is going to be a tendency this cycle towards exaggeration. It just might come out of you. You might notice it from others, especially when trying to get others to buy into some idea or a belief or a product, a system, whatever it might be. This is a trait that does bring a natural authority when the actions are truly aligned or the words coming out of the mouth are aligned with what you really believe in. You have to be a living embodiment of that new that you're trying to get others to embrace. It's really going to come across as fake if you're saying one thing, but you're not willing to live it yourself. Now, this is in the willpower center, and willpower has its limits. It's not generative like the sacral energy. It can push, but then it has to relax and recuperate. The juice, per se, isn't always there. So leisure time is really essential for recuperation of the willpower center. If you have been working really hard, you could really feel the need for a vacation this cycle with this activation coming in. The caution here is that the ego power of this gate could be used in a negative way to maintain status quo instead of advancing, instead of that continuous improvement. Or there could be an inability to adapt to the new, holding on to the old instead of embracing and selling the new. Now, this trait is associated with the immune system. So if you have been really pushing hard in what you've been doing and don't take that break for recuperation, this is a time when you could pick up some bug that's going to force you to recuperate. And we're going to see when we get to the long-term transits, recuperation's coming up as a theme once again in another trait. So really a strong pressure here or a strong recommendation, let's say, to really be extra careful in looking after your immune system in this cycle. When we look at these two traits together, there could be that positive exaggeration to bring the tribe, the community, the business together, or support for the business together that could benefit everyone. Or great lies could be told by a leader to bring himself more resources without benefiting others. A leader and their supporters could also exaggerate the benefits of something to try and get others on board with it. So Make sure you're in touch with your own strategy and authority. Do your own research. Listen to yourself, your strategy and authority above all other voices. If you have excess resources in some way, with that gate of the gather, that tribal leadership, there could be a real generosity that comes through this particular cycle as well. And you could be quite persuasive in selling your ideas, products, etc. Again, as long as you truly believe in them. All right, let's move into our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their chart is receiving activation of the related qualities and traits. So there can be a big impact that way. This cycle, we just have 3 channels that are being created by the transit of the moon. So not the greatest impact, but I want you to know that they're there. The moon only stays in a gate or a trait for about 10 to 11 hours. So the impact is smaller, but just in case something comes through for you, best to know they're there. So the first one comes in on June 7th, early in this cycle at 10:52 a.m. going until 11:16 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's 5:52 p.m. going until June 8th at 5:16 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 44, the trait of alertness in the splenic center. That's our most primal awareness center that's associated with health, well-being, survival, and operates in a pulse of knowing in the now. Safe for me or not, healthy for me or not. It's connecting with our Earth's position, that gate 26 in the ego center. Together, they create the channel of surrender, a design of a transmitter. Part of the tribal circuitry again, so that mutual support is going to be there. Now, we already talked about the egoist of gate 26, but how does gate 26 know what it needs to sell, what it needs to be persuasive about? It's through gate 44. That's where the awareness comes in the now, of who can do the transmitting, what needs to be transmitted, and the framework that will allow that continuous improvement to be successful. This is about transmitting the change. So once again, the tribe will leave the old and adopt the new, a necessary part of that continuous improvement process. It really works best, this trait, when it's destroying something that's existing and replacing it with something new. This is destroying the memory of the old in order to replace it with the new and get people to take that up. There has to be some kind of replacement here. It's not just pure anarchy. Tear it all down, right? And then what? All right. So this is a trait that wants to show others that, what you have now, that's not good enough. You can do better. You can have this better system, this better product, this better way, whatever it might be. It's part of the entrepreneurial, business oriented side of the tribe, which ultimately is about getting resources for the tribe. And the reality is, if there's no updates, if there's no continuous improvement, the business could become obsolete. So there's a recognition built into the tribe that what they have is replaceable. Now, it's a creative channel, but it's not something mutative like the individual circuitry brings in, like brand new, never been seen before. This is a continuous improvement. So it doesn't start from scratch. It starts from what's there and brings the next improvement. It's called the channel of surrender because it's the ego that needs to be surrendered in this process. One thing about the tribe is that they don't really praise these people for bringing the continuous improvement, even though there's an appreciation of it being done. So yeah, those of you that might have this channel in your chart, you're probably familiar with that, right? You support so much the continuous improvement process, but you don't really get a lot of praise for it. All right. The change here that's brought does need to be functional. This is really important to the tribe. It's got to be functional. If you have the 44 or the 26 in your own design, it does bring a business orientation to your design. And if you can't make money from the improvements that you bring, there can be this sense of not feeling successful in life. If you have if you have children that have this channel in their own design, for their creativity in this way, bringing improvement, making improvements, it's really actually great to reward them for that, foster this characteristic of being a transmitter. Ultimately, this channel's purpose is to help create wealth for the tribe. Okay, now when this one goes out on June 7th at 11:16 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, it's going to move right into another gate that's going to create a channel. It's going to move into gate 1. That's going to go until June 8th at 10:37 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC coming in at 5:16 a.m. on June 8th, going until 4:37 p.m. The moon going into gate 1, the trait of the creative, is connecting with gate 8. This is Uranus position, the trait of individual contribution, creating the channel of inspiration, a design of a creative role model. It's part of the individual circuitry that can bring through something new and mutative. So these first two channels coming through the moon, they're short but quite creative. If you have this channel in your design, you're part of what you're here to be is a living example of uniqueness. This channel operates in a pulse of creative inspiration that you have no control over it. The pulse could come through, it might not come through. Again, it's something new, not the continuous improvement that we saw in that 4426 channel of the transmitter. It's rooted in knowing that true creative inspiration is independent of will. You can't force it to happen on demand. It comes when it comes. It brings the opportunity to share your uniqueness out into the world. Individuals just be themselves in their own unique way and don't care if others follow them. The caution is that there can be a fear of rejection here of one's unique contribution and uniqueness. There can be a holding back of that. There could also be a blurting out of one's creative expression or almost a forcing of it on others when it hasn't been invited. In that case, it's likely going to be expressed to the wrong people at the wrong time and isn't going to be recognized. Our last moon channel coming in is on June 10th at 7:31 a.m., going until 6:35 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's June 10th at 1:31 p.m., going until June 11th at 12:35 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 5 in the sacral center, the trait of fixed rhythms, fixed habits, connecting with Jupiter's position, gate 15, the trait of extremes and love of humanity in the G center. The G center is associated with love, identity, and direction in life. Now, we had this channel for almost the whole last cycle. I think there was just one day at the start of the cycle where it wasn't there, and then Jupiter clicked into that gate 15. Together, they create the channel of rhythm, a design of being in the flow. This is a very magnetic channel. It can empower the love of humanity, or the polarity can be there as well. And it's about being in your flow, which can have this kind of my way or the highway feel, and it can pull others into a flow. So for those of you that have this channel, when you're in your flow, you're using your energy in a healthy way. It can be very magnetic, but if you're feeling stuck or like the world is chaotic, it usually means that you're not in your flow. For those of us that don't have this channel, it's an opportunity to be in touch with the flow of our lives and the flow of nature. This can be a little bit tricky if you have the 15, the gate of extremes, and not the 5 usually. You might get pulled out of moving between your extremes and into something fixed. And if you have the 5 and not the 15, Jupiter's position, you might get pulled out of your fixed habits and into a flow that might not be correct for you. So just something to watch there. All right, that brings us to our long-term transits. Long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for longer periods of time. So what can happen is your not self mind, your shadow mind can start to think they're part of you, even when it's something that's not in your design. And then when that trait moves on to something else, it's like, where did that go? It can be a little confusing. We have the nodes of the moon related to our direction and environment sitting in gates 36, the trait of crisis, and gate 6, the trait of conflict and friction, both in the emotional center. We will finally be seeing those move on in our next cycle. Just a little heads up on that. For gate 36, the trait of crisis, line 1 is called resistance, and it has a developmental theme that says the rule of cycles in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. That just means that there are certain limitations that are inherent in not having experience in something, but you can move through it. There's a determination to persevere as long as it's correct for you according to your strategy and authority through the full experience. On the other hand, the detriment can bring resistance to the change that's needed as part of moving through the experience. For gate 6, the trait of conflict and friction, line 1 is called retreat. It also has a developmental theme that says the realization that wasting one's resources against overwhelming odds is not courage, but folly. Gate 6 is part of the channel of mating and intimacy, about coming into a bond. It's kind of a one-on-one with another person, whether that's for business, personal, intimacy, and it's emotional. It's in the emotional center, which tells you right off it takes time to know when a relationship or if a relationship is correct. And you want to know that the other in the relationship can accept the highs and the lows of the emotions that we go through. It can bring some conflict because where you're at one day in an emotional wave can be different than another day. So the exaltation is the emotional stability to accept conflict. The detriment is there can be emotional instability in times of conflict. Just going through the wave is going to bring conflict naturally, again, because where you are one day may be different than another day. Jupiter, with its quality of expansion, is sitting in gate 15, that trait of extremes in the G center. We saw that in one of the moon's channels there. It's sitting in line 2 called influence at the start of the cycle, which is about just being in whatever extreme you're in. Little sandpiper going by. I don't know if you can hear that through Zoom or not, but Jupiter, though, is going to move into line 3 on the 10th, which is called ego inflation. And line 3 is a trial and error line. So the idea of this line is, or the idea of this trait is that you just allow yourself to move along the pendulum of extremes from one side to the other. You know, I'm late for a while, I'm late for everything I do, and then I'm early for everything that I do. But with this line 3, there can be a tendency to hold on to an extreme that you find is a useful way of dealing with others. So maybe you found that there's a benefit from always being early. And so you grab onto that and don't allow the natural swing to being late. This is the ego getting involved. This is going to be of advantage to me, right? This is an ego thing and how I relate to others. So I'm going to hold on to this way of doing things. So there can be a loss of the natural movement through extremes and the wisdom that can be gained through that diversity. Jupiter, with its expansion, could bring an expansion of the extremes that we move through. So, something to watch for in the bigger collective there. Saturn and Neptune still both sitting in gate 25, the trait of spirit of the self, of innocence and universal love, or the polarity. Neptune's been sitting in line 4 for quite a while, which is quite a nice line. It has no polarity. It's something we learn over time, and it says the nature of true innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances. The spiritual warrior. On June 10th, Neptune's going to move to line 5, which is called recuperation. This has a developmental theme that says when innocence is sapped of its vitality, healing is the first priority. When you stay in innocence, in the now, seeing the world through eyes of wonder and being comfortable in the unknown, other people want that, and it can sap your vitality. So this trait brings the power of the spirit to heal and to be healed. And it's through withdrawing to recuperate. So here we have this recuperation theme again, as I mentioned before. Perhaps Neptune being there is going to dissolve what's in the way of healing your spirit. Or Neptune could veil it, making it harder to get a handle on. The detriment here is hypochondria and the need to be healed by others. So this is all about being yourself. And when you're not yourself, it can bring illness. Well, also a lot of people don't rest until they get sick. So once again, really look after yourself this cycle. This line is about being present, being good to your immune system. Saturn sitting in line 3, bringing its limitations and consequences to sensibility. That line 3 has a developmental theme that says the recognition that innocent action does not in itself guarantee success. Now, it's going to change lines also on June 10th. So lots of movement going on June 10th. Now Saturn will move into gate 4, which we just talked about. Neptune's going to be leaving that line of survival that says the true nature of innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances, the spiritual warrior. But Saturn's a whole different energy than Neptune. So perhaps Saturn's going to limit the circumstances under which you can maintain innocence, in which you can be yourself. Perhaps it will bring greater discipline to that. This could be a little bit of a tricky pair with Saturn in that line 4 and Neptune in line 5. Perhaps where if you're not being disciplined and looking after yourself, looking after your immune system, Saturn might amplify the consequences of illness. All right. Uranus, with its unusualness, sitting in gate 8, the individual trait and the throat center of individual contribution. It's sitting in line 5 called Dharma. And it has a developmental theme that says holding together does not exclude eventual separation. It's really about bringing through your expression, your individual contribution, making sure people understand it, and then just letting it go. Right. It's like the teacher. You have to let the students go at some point and do what they're going to do with that spark that you may bring through. In its detriment, it's the parent that can't let go of the child, right? Wanting to hold on and keep directing how they use that spark instead of just allowing it to unfold for them however it will. Pluto still sitting in gate 41, still in line 2. That's the trait of contraction and decrease, part of the abstract experiential circuitry. Gate 41's in the root center with its pressure to start, to get going. How you start an experience is through daydreaming and fantasizing about that next experience you want to have. So that's still there with Pluto as well. Just a reminder that in line 2, what it's saying is in the end, it really has to be practical or of value in some way. Okay, remember for any of these traits, if you don't have them in your design, it's just pressure from the transit field. You can observe it playing out around you. You can learn from it. Look out at the world, right? You will see that a lot of the world is living the transit field instead of living themselves. Okay. Whether there's actually anything for you to do about these pressures is according to your own strategy and authority. So don't let the transit field be puppeting you. All right. That brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, go to jovianarchive.com. And if you're new to human design and want to understand the basics of the body graph at a high level, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes, maybe a bit of background on human design, you can grab my free Human Design Basics and Mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could give this episode a like and consider subscribing. All right. Well, it could be a good cycle to really look at your resources, what you have, what you don't have, perhaps gathering support from others. Be careful that you're not buying things with resources that you don't have. Watch the tendency to exaggerate things that you might not actually believe. And at the same time, things that you really believe in, you may be more persuasive with getting those across to others. Keep an eye on your immune system this cycle. Take extra precautions. A little recuperation might be in order. All right. As always, it comes back to following your own strategy and authority. Have a wonderful cycle. Please be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.